Hello there. It's time for Sports and Stuff. I'm your host, Patrick Haggerty, and I'm going to be talking about sports and stuff. I'm actually currently taking a break from watching, what's it called? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is a great movie. If any of you haven't seen it already, this is my third time watching it. I think I saw it twice in theaters. And it's awesome. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I am taking a break from it. So this is in the middle of me watching it. I'll go back to watching it later. I might grab some snacks and finish watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But for now, it's time to talk about sports and stuff. And maybe I'll talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Great movie. But that'll be later. That'll be the stuff. For now, we're going to be talking about sports. And as you can see, where my Yankees stuff, I also have a pair of Yankees pants that I could be wearing right now. So I could be decked out. I have Yankees paraphernalia coming out the wazoo, as it were. So I have it for days. But it is officially baseball season to me, anyway. Even unless you're a hockey or a basketball fan, which I am kind of, and I'm into those seasons also. But for me, it's baseball season. I got a softball and a glove back here, and also there's a hockey stick and some eggs, bacon, and toast in that picture right there. But yeah, it's feeling like baseball season. Super Bowl is over. Best part about the playoffs is in the football is that once it's over, that means that baseball is right there. Its pitchers and catchers have reported officially. Spring training has started. The games start in from the recording of this show in about 8 days. The spring training games are going to start. So we're right on the cusp. It's feeling real. There's those stupid interviews where the players say that they are in the best shape of their lives, and they're carrying duffel bags, and it's exciting to see them carry duffel bags because that's how hungry we all are for baseball. All us baseball fans is that we will watch players do wind sprints, and that's enough for us to get excited. But the Yankees are my team. I'll be talking about them for the most part. I'll also be talking about the XFL. It's the UFL now, but I still consider it the XFL because there is the XFL division, my favorite division in the UFL, the XFL division. But for now, let's talk about the Yankees. And the subject that I want to talk about with the Yankees is that the Yankees need more pitching. The Yankees pitching does not look like it's gonna hold up over the course of the season, and hopefully I'm wrong. But that's what I feel is that the Yankees need more pitching. That'll probably be some kind of title for this show, or at least one of the titles for this episode. Is that the Yankees need pitching, and it feels like they're not going to get the type of pitching help that many Yankee fans are hoping for. It seems like they're going to pick up maybe some other bargain basement type pitchers as spring training continues. They've gotten a few relievers who no one's heard of, some guys who have been dropped by other teams to add to some depth. But for now, it seems like the Yankees are happy with the rotation and the bullpen that they have, which one by one is actually pretty good. You have, as of right now, it's Cole, Rodon, Garrett Cole, Anthony Rodon, Nestor Cortez, Marcus Stroman, and Clark Schmidt. That's a good rotation, especially if Carlos Rodon is kind of the X factor of the rotation. Carlos Rodon could make it so that the Yankees are right, that this rotation is appropriate and is good enough. If Carlos Rodon is what we signed him to be, is what the Yankees signed him to be, which is kind of a co-ace and really just an ace while also having another ace. that's what we were expecting him to be, is a guy who could have been an ace on another team, but the Yankees have the best pitcher in baseball, so he's not the ace on the Yankees. So the Yankees need Rodon to have one of those seasons that he was able to have with the Giants and with the White Sox, in order for the pitching to not be as much of a problem as it seems like it might be as the season approaches. But short of that, it seems like the rotation is not going to be strong enough, and more than not strong enough, it's just not going to be healthy enough. Carlos Rodon being a big reason for that is that over the course of his career, he gets hurt all the time. If you look at his two best seasons, the seasons that were the reason why he got signed to the big contract that he got signed to, if you look at both those seasons, I think one of them he got up to that 170, 180 innings mark, and then the other one he got hurt. He missed like 6 starts even in one of his best seasons that he ever had. He's an injury-prone guy. He's an injury-prone starter that even in his really good seasons, he is going to get hurt. So the Yankees are kind of the best case scenario feels like him going 130 innings with a great ERA. That's a reasonable hope for Rodon, is that he's going to be really good but get hurt. So that seems to be the best case scenario for Carlos Rodon, is that he'll be really good, but he's not going to give you an appropriate amount of innings for a number 2 starter. You have Garrett Cole, who you hope that you can pencil in for that 200 innings and be awesome, and you just have to assume that. It's like back in the day, some people would say, "Oh, are you worried about Mariano Rivera having a down season this year?" And what I would say to them is, "Hey, if we're worried about Mariano Rivera having a down season, then the season's over. So there's no reason to worry about that." It's kind of like when people say, "Oh, well, the Earth was created by a bunch of crazy possibilities happening all at the same time and happening all at once. The Earth happened because it collided with other huge rocks in outer space, and it created the exact circumstances that allowed for life to be created, which then created complex life, which eventually created human life." So all of this outrageously unlikely stuff had to happen for the Earth to be created. And some people say, like, "Oh, well, what if that hadn't happened?" Well, then we wouldn't exist, so we wouldn't have to worry about it. But it did happen, so we exist. Which, that's how important Garrett Cole is to the Yankees' success this season. Is Garrett Cole is like the Big Bang of existence for life and for just the existence of the universe. That's how important Garrett Cole is to the Yankees season this year, is that if we have to worry about Garrett Cole, then the season doesn't exist. So you just have to assume that he's going to be good. We talked about Carlos Rodon a little bit. Nestor Cortez is similar to Carlos Rodon in that if he's really good and he does what we've seen him do in years past, then that's going to solidify the rotation in a way that we don't have to worry about it nearly as much as it feels like we are worrying about it. But you just can't count on that. So the optimistic side of looking at it is that Nestor Cortez has, in recent memory, had really great seasons. Where he has pitched 150 to 160 innings and had sub-3 ERAs. He doesn't even have to be that good for him to be a really effective starter, given the fact that the Yankees should have a much better offense this year, and their bullpen it can be relied upon, generally speaking. So we would just need Nestor Cortez to be solid, but even that can't be counted on, because he has done it like once in his entire career of being a solid starting pitcher. Otherwise, he's either been a non-factor as a starter, kind of been a long reliever / spot starter in much of his career, or last year when he was sort of expected to be that number 2 or 3 starter going into the season, he got hurt because his body couldn't handle the workload that he was asked to do. Coming into that season, he had been overworked or really just worked at all, and his body just can't quite handle it. Some guys have 1 or 2 good seasons in their entire career, and they are really good. You look at them, Ubaldo Jimenez. Remember Ubaldo Jimenez of the Colorado Rockies? He was great for like 2 years. He was great, and then that was it. And that sometimes is what pitchers do, is that they have 1 or 2 really, really good seasons, and you think, oh, is this guy good now? And the answer ends up being no. Sean Chacon, for you Yankee fans. Sean Chacon had a great season, and even that was 05, he was very good. 06, he came in and looked pretty good also, and then he fell apart because his body couldn't handle being that good. The steroids wore off or what have you. Hey, who's saying that? But yeah, so some players can just have 1.5 good seasons, and that's their entire career. Which, am I saying Nestor is that necessarily? No, but doesn't he seem like? Do you think that Nestor Cortez is more like Sean Chacon, or is Nestor Cortez more like El Duque, which is probably the best case scenario for Cortez, is to be like El Duque, or do you think that he is like some starter who becomes good in their mid to late 20s and then stays good? I can't think of an example, because usually a pitcher is good for the entirety of their career. You assume they're going to be good, and they start off and they start and show that they can be really good, or they have 1 or 2 good seasons and that's it. They don't start being good at 27 and then remain good for the rest of their careers, or for a long career, that is. Nestor had his prime of his physical abilities happen in his late 20s, just like every other male, or pretty much every other male is their strongest when they're in their late 20s. So he was able to throw really hard and nail his physical aptitude and nail the pitches that he was throwing. And then at 29, when super stud athletes are still in their prime, but most humans are no longer in their prime at 29 years old, that might have been what is happening with Nestor Cortez, is that his body is just no longer physically perfect like it was for that year and a half when he was really, really good, and he might just be falling apart. So there's definitely a chance that that's the case, which he should still be given that opportunity to be good, to show that he's not Sean Chacon, but the Yankees should have done more to build around him to make sure that if that does happen, that they're protected, which they didn't really do. I suppose the one thing that they did do, which brings us to the next pitcher on the list of starting pitchers to talk about, is Marcus Stroman. Marcus Stroman, very, very good. It was a very good signing. They didn't have to sign him to a big, long contract, which I don't really give a shit about because it's not my money. They should sign Snell and they should sign Montgomery, but they're not going to. But they signed Marcus Stroman, which is a really good signing. I won't argue that it's not a really good signing, but it's just not quite enough. They needed to sign like another guy like Marcus Stroman, and if they had, then you would have said, okay, that's pretty good. You have a nice little rotation now. You have the appropriate depth, which they don't have right now. Marcus Stroman, as in contrast to Rodon and Cortez, Stroman has a decent history of pitching 130 to 160, 70 innings, which is appropriate. You can get by if he gives you only 130. 130 might be the best case scenario from the other two if you really think about it. 130 is kind of the worst case scenario with Stroman. Generally, at least over the course of his career, it could be worse than that for sure. But generally speaking, he'll miss 5 starts, 5 or 6 starts. But he's going to pitch a decent amount of innings within his starts. But if he gives you 150, that's pretty normal. If he gives you 130, that's probably the low point of what he can give you. If he gives you 170, that's pretty appropriate also. There's a good chance he's going to do that, which is good. So he's probably the Yankees' 2 starter in terms of who you can rely on the most after Cole, but which is not a terrible 2 starter. And then your 3 it's tough to say. Cortez and Rodon have a very high ceiling, especially Rodon. Cortez, hopefully Rodon has a good season, because Cortez I could very much see just being a totally fine 4 starter. That's what I kind of expect from him. Rodon, again, he's the guy. He's the pivot point of the Yankees starting rotation. But talking more about Stroman seems like he's the guy who, when he goes, you think, okay, he's strong. He's going to give us 5 or 6 good solid innings on a regular basis. And he's going to pitch most of his starts. He's not even that young. But he seems to be in good shape. He's a stud. He is a stud athlete, as opposed to Cortez, who has a little bit of a feeling of he might not be that next level of high octane athletic ability. It might be that his body is not going to be able to handle that extra workload on a consistent basis, which this season would still be. He missed a lot of last year. Hopefully that means that that he was able to build up some extra strength because he didn't pitch that many innings last year. Hopefully that means that this year is going to be good. Same with Rodon. So there is reason to believe that both of them are actually going to be pretty strong going into this season. It's just that you're basing that off of the fact that I guess they're on a every other year trajectory, the two of them, and this is the year that they would be good. Because they were bad, because they weren't able to pitch last year, where over the next few years they might be on that every other year trajectory, as I said. So let's just hope that is the case, and that's a somewhat reasonable expectation for both of them, is that they're going to be stronger because they didn't pitch last year, because they got hurt. So we're expecting them to be stronger because they got hurt. I don't know. That's a lot to ask in terms of being confident. Though Rodon did pitch his bullpen earlier in the week. I think it was today of this recording, and he was throwing really hard, which apparently last year he was not throwing very hard, which does make sense in that every other year trajectory, because the year before that he had to throw a lot of innings and he was really awesome. This past year, last year, that is 2023, he barely pitched because he was coming off that big strong year that he had to put everything into in order to get that contract. So now this year, maybe this is that every other year, right? Let's do it. Cole is just really good. He might not be Cy Young again, but he's going to be really good and strong. He's going to throw a lot of innings. Rodon is going to bounce back. Right? Maybe. Because he was hurt. So I'm banking off the fact that he didn't throw many innings last year because he was hurt and bad. So he didn't stay in games that he was pitching because he had to get taken out because he was so terrible. Same with Nestor Cortez. He didn't pitch very many innings, so maybe he'll be really strong. Stroman, I think, had a bad second half and then missed some time because he was so bad. So again, he's gonna bounce. He's gonna bounce back because he was bad. So that's my expectation, is that the Yankees pitching staff is going to be good because they were bad last year. I think that there's actually a mathematical equation that will say that the Yankees will be good because they were bad, because they didn't have to try very hard last year because they were so bad, and they got to kind of skate. That's for the whole team, not just the rotation. And then Clark Schmidt. So let's talk about Clark Schmidt for a couple minutes. Clark Schmidt, that's going to be a nice, if everything pans out, just even sort of, if Cole is appropriate Cole, low threes. He was in the 2s last year ERA. If he's just in the low 3s, that'd be fantastic. And then you have Rodon, like kind of in the mid 3s, and he's missing some starts every so often, but not that many. Like he goes on the IL like twice, but he only misses like 2. He misses 2 starts in the first one, and that's not until like mid-May. And then he misses 3 starts, but it's in August. And then he's able to pitch all of September, so he's strong for the playoffs. So he misses like 5, maybe 6 starts over the course of the season. He throws like 25 starts, and then he pitches like 100. So 25 times 5 is 125. So a little bit more than that. So 135 innings from Rodon, and he has like a 3.65 ERA. Like not great, but like pretty good. Like that's a pretty good number 2, and he throws like 130 something innings. Like that'd be pretty good. And then Cortez is a little bit worse than that, but he is not bad. But he's actually our 4 starter because Stroman is our 3 starter, and Stroman actually pitches to like a similar ERA to Rodon, but he just pitches more innings. Like he pitches like 165 innings. He actually like qualifies for the ERA title, which you have to do an inning per game played by the team. So he throws like 165 innings. And he also has and his ERA is like a little worse, but he's still considered to be your 2 starter. So he's like a 3.8 ERA, and he throws like 170 innings, and then Nestor is your number 4 starter, and he has like a 4.3 ERA. But he's like doesn't get hurt. Like he throws 5 innings a start. He like has like 100. He also 130 something innings, like in that same range as Rodon, but he's like a good amount worse. But he's like throwing his innings, and he has some good starts, and he gets you through 5, so your bullpen can take over, and then. He has like a 4.3 ERA as your number 4 starter. So if all that happens, and this is all to get back to Clark Schmidt, if all that happens, and then Clark Schmidt is your number 5, and he might throw like 160, 170 innings himself because he's young, he's strong. He doesn't get hurt. Like he just is like solid. Like he's throwing like 5 innings to start, like a little bit more than 5 innings to start, but he ends up pitching like 30 starts. Like he ends up getting to like a right around 5 innings to start. So he ends up throwing like 180 innings, but he has like a 4.2 ERA, but he throws 180 innings. So like there's an argument to be made that he's your 2 starter, but not really, because there's other guys who are better, but they just haven't thrown as many innings. And he's like, sometimes he's throwing like, oh yeah, he's like, there's that one game where he threw like 6 2/3 shutout, but then there's that other game where he throws like 5 innings, 4 earned runs, and he just like is like really solid. That would be like nice. Like if everybody else is doing what they got to do, and then Schmidt just has like an innings eating, like nice solid season, that would be awesome. Now I'm talking myself into thinking that that's what's going to happen, is that everybody's just going to be like solid, and no one's going to get like brutally hurt. That'd be great. That's really what it's all about, is just that nobody gets. It's that Rodon needs to throw over 100 innings. Without a doubt. Like you got both Rodon and Cortez have to throw over 100. They have to throw over 100, and then there's like some kind of correlation to if Nestor throws like only 110, like he has to throw over 100. But if he throws only 110, but then Stroman has like a nice strong season, and he throws like 180. Wouldn't that be cool if he threw like 180 innings? Like just really is just like boom, boom. Stroman is strong, and he's just throwing 180. But so you have like Cole, Stroman, and Schmidt as your innings eaters, and then you have Rodon and Cortez as the guys who are just throwing like, well, when they pitch they're good, but they miss like 10 starts apiece, and then they end up so that's like, which brings you to the pitching depth, who is Luke Weaver, who that's 10 starts by Cortez, 10 starts by Rodon, and then you have Luke Weaver, who is the Yankee 6 starter, he's going to end up pitching a lot. The chance of him starting the season as part of the rotation is like pretty high, So that's where it becomes upsetting, is that the number 6 seems to be non-existent. They have Luke Weaver, they have Luis Heel. They have, man. These guys would all be fine if you thought, oh yeah, they'll pitch like one, we'll need a 6 starter once a month, twice a month, even, I mean that's a lot, but like once a month, twice a month, right? 12 starts for your 6 starter. That's like appropriate. It's gonna be more than that. It's gonna be in the 20s. It's gonna be in 20s that you need like a legitimate 6 starter. And then obviously if 2 guys are hurt at the same time, then you need a 6th and a 7th starter, which the Yankees don't even have a 6 starter. So the amount of starts that you're going to get from other people is probably going to be somewhere in, it's going to be an entire starter. That's usually the case, is that you have 30 games started by guys other than your main starting rotation, your starting 5. At least like 30, that's pretty guaranteed, because you have 162, so that's a little bit more than 30 starts per guy. If they're all starting, so 5 guys, if they're all missing 6 starts on average, which they do that even with super healthy guys, they make it so that they miss 1 game. So the odds of there being about 30 start, like it's an entire rotation piece. Like they're all starting about 30 games, and then if you have, so that means that's 12, or that's actually 12 starts per. But there's no way. They're not all going to start 30. Cole's going to start 32. And then, so that, I guess that gives you 2 to play with whoever you think is the most injury prone between Rodon and Cortez. But it's more than that. So if they all start 30, then that's 12 that you have from your 6 starter. Rodon is going to miss another 4. He'll start 30. He'll start 26 games. That's my prediction. Cortez, I think, is actually going to miss even more than that. I think Cortez I worry about in terms of just his arm not being strong enough. Where if Rodon, I think, has a healthy season, he'll still miss a bunch of starts. He'll still miss like a handful of starts. But even Cortez, I think that no matter what, he's going to miss more than a handful of starts. So I think that Rodon will start 26 games. We'll say Cortez will start 22. So that's already 4 plus 8, 12 on top of the 12 that you need just from everyone starting 30 games, which would be fantastic. If everybody started 30 games, that'd be like they're all, like none of them got hurt at all. And which is not going to happen. So that's an extra. So I just added an extra 4 from Rodon and an extra 8 from Nestor. So that's 24 total. And do I think that? Yeah, I think that Stroman will miss another 4. Not 4. I'll give Stroman a little bit more credit. I think there's a really good chance that he will miss that 4. But I think that thinking that Stroman, I think there's a guarantee that he's going to miss 2. That'll be just putting him on the IL to give him half a month of rest. Just that'll be that phantom IL, that notorious phantom IL. Schmidt might not. So maybe it's a little bit less than 30. Maybe it is a little bit less than 30. And as we do the math here, that we're going to need. But that's still basically an entire starter. So even with that, the amount of starts that go to guys who aren't in the starting 5 is probably going to be more than Rodon starts. Rodon, if he starts at 26 that I predicted, and then 28 or so starts go to somebody other than those top 5, then you just so Rodon and then not to mention Cortez, but Rodon is like your 4th starter in terms of amount of games started. That just seems like it's a pretty guarantee is that guys are going to miss that many, and that's if things go pretty well. Is that they're going to miss that many starts. But yeah, so we'll see. We'll see about that. The Yankees do need more pitching, and hopefully, I guess the hope now, because they're not going to get one of the big starters, is that somebody comes up and is really awesome. They have Luis Heel, they have Warren, they have a few other pitching prospects that are legitimate in terms of their possibilities. And then in the middle of the season, I guess they might trade for somebody, but they won't trade for somebody unless they desperately need them. But why are you waiting until you desperately need somebody? Okay. But the bullpen seems to be really good. The bullpen, we will talk about that since this is a pitching episode. The bullpen, they got Caleb Ferguson and Victor Gonzalez this year. Caleb Ferguson, Victor Gonzalez, both lefties. So effectively, one of them will replace Wandy Peralta. Wandy Peralta was not some stud when the Yankees first got him, so that's a reasonable ask, is that one of them will be able to turn into what Wandy ended up being with the Yankees. And really, Caleb Ferguson is a legitimate reliever. They traded for him from the Dodgers. He's a legit reliever. That's cool. The bullpen's really good. I'll read off the bullpen as of now. You have Holmes, Clay Holmes, Ian Hamilton, Caleb Ferguson, Tommy Kahnle, Victor Gonzalez, Johnny Loizaga, and Ron Marinaccio. Seems to be the bullpen as of right now. I'm counting Luke Weaver as their 6th starter, so I barely even count him as a reliever, even though he will end up being a reliever, assuming everybody stays healthy. And that bullpen is good. The bullpen is going to be really awesome in many ways. If you consider Holmes, Kahnle, and Loizaga as your top 3, as the guys who Cole opening day goes 6 innings, and then you have, obviously, everybody's healthy, everybody's rested. You have Kahnle, Loizaga, Holmes. Boom, game over. Right? That would be the idea. Let's say there's a game the very next day. You just pitched all 3 of them. You don't necessarily need to pitch all of them again. You have a full rested bullpen. Or let's say you pitch all 3 of them again the next day. The next day, Rodon, 6 innings, 1 run. You're looking to win this game too. Again, you go, what is it? Kahnle, Loizaga, Holmes. Right? Boom. Done. The following day, good chance they're not going to pitch any of them, and maybe you finagle it a little bit so that maybe Holmes is available. So in the first 2 games, let's say that Kahnle and Loizaga both pitch. You have Holmes still available to pitch the 9th, but the other 2 guys are not available. If you tell me that you have Caleb Ferguson and I guess who would be the next? Ian Hamilton. So it would be Ian Hamilton in the 7th, Caleb Ferguson, a legitimate career reliever who has been awesome for much of his career. You have Hamilton, Ferguson, Holmes. That's good. So generally speaking, you kind of want to save one of Holmes, Loizaga, Kahnle. That's your closer list, and maybe to some degree you want to save one of them as your closer for a given game, but then your setup man list is pretty strong. You have You have Caleb Ferguson, Ian Hamilton, Victor Gonzalez. I'll have to see Victor Gonzalez. His numbers aren't as strong as a Caleb Ferguson, for as it goes with the guys who came over this offseason, who I'm not as familiar with. Caleb Ferguson seems to be a legitimate stud reliever who can kind of be slotted into that setup role when need be, and really just in general, he's a setup level reliever. He's an eighth inning guy level reliever. Whereas Victor Gonzalez seems to be a little bit more of a, he'll get some lefties out, which is good. That's good. That's a good sixth best reliever. That's a great sixth best reliever. That's strong. He's a legitimate reliever. He's not Nick Ramirez, which is what the Yankees were shitting out there last season. Ron Marinaccio would be in the minors if not for the fact that Scott Efros had a back injury. So Scott Efros is really should be on this list, but Scott Efros hurt himself. So he's somewhere in the pecking order when he comes back. Well, actually, he's somewhere nicely in the pecking order. So it'll be nice when it's nice to have him in the wings coming back at some point. The Ferguson trade kind of gives you that assurance that you'll have somebody to replace Peralta, and last year, the Yankees bullpen was the best bullpen in baseball, and that bullpen was kind of built around that Holmes, Canely, Loaizaga, Peralta mix. A bunch of them got hurt as the season went on, but it was that mix. As long as two of them were healthy and pitching well, you had obviously a very strong bullpen, because they did have a very strong bullpen. And then Hamilton came in, and he was really good for a lot of the season. And so there were plenty of really good relievers last year. And if you look at Wandy Peralta, he left, but Caleb Ferguson comes in and he replaces him in that role as being that kind of a lefty. You have a couple other lefties, but he's your A lefty, and he's appropriate for that role. So the Yankees bullpen is going to be really good and really strong, most likely, which is good because the rotation depth is not good. So if there is an injury, the hope is that if a Luke Weaver has to slot into the rotation, which is going to happen quickly, if a Luis Heel needs to slot into the rotation, which might happen in May when Luke Weaver can no longer start games anymore. If one of them has to slot in, then you have a nice deep bullpen to make up for it. And the hope is that the rotation stays healthy, which is not a fun thing to hope for because it hasn't happened in a while. Well, 2022, the beginning of the season, they were all pitching really well and pitching all year. But they also had a bunch of horses. They also had a bunch of big dudes who knew how to stay healthy. Which seems like it's not the case. But, hey, every other year, Rodon, and then to that same effect, Nestor had a bad year with injuries last year, which means that he's going to be nice and well rested, and he'll be stronger this year for it. So that's how it's going to happen. Is the Yankees need more pitching unless they all stay healthy. Then they don't need more pitching. So the episode title is going to be that the Yankees need more pitching, but with the caveat, unless they all stay miraculously healthy, then they won't need more pitching. So won't that be nice? And the hitting is good. But that's what we're talking about anyway. We're talking about the pitching. Man, what else? There's lots else. The Super Bowl happened. I was rooting for the Chiefs, so I guess I was happy. It was a very long game. It ended up being quite long. I was at my parents' house watching the game, and and it was a very good game, and it ended up kind of happening in the way that made it very good. There was a few moments towards the end of the Super Bowl. Chiefs win against the Niners in overtime with the new postseason overtime rules. Chiefs almost lost a couple times in a way that would have made it kind of boring. The earlier on in that overtime, when the Chiefs were down by 3, there was a 4th down that the Chiefs ended up converting, and I remember thinking, whoa, this game was kind of a weird slog of a game at times, so if the Chiefs lose on this 4th down, then this game might have been boring. But that didn't happen. They converted the 4th down. They converted a few other cool plays as the game went along, and then they eventually scored that touchdown, which made it very exciting. But it could have by accident been very boring. So the Super Bowl was kind of saved by every inch of it. It needed every part of it for it to be an interesting Super Bowl. It had some moments of, oh, this is a messy game. You know, early on the defenses were really good. I'd say the first half the defenses were really good, and it was a defensive showdown, which is cool. And there was some legitimately great defensive plays. The second half, and then the second 3 quarters of 5 quarters, really the second 3/5. It's not quarters, it's fifths. The second 3/5 was a little bit messy. It had the Chiefs came back, and what didn't they tied it on after the muffed punt. So there was a muffed punt. There was some ugly plays. Other than that, towards the end, the Niners made a weird decision taking the ball at the beginning of overtime, and then a lot of the play they kicked kind of like it was just kind of like a little bit of a dull drive to get that field goal, and then they gave it back, and it ended up being long. It ended up being long, where that last, again, quote unquote quarter, it's 5 of them, so it's not, but the overtime period, the end of that first overtime period, almost went the distance. It was 3 seconds away from going the distance, which at the time I didn't quite know the rule, where I was like, can this time out? The answer makes sense to be no, because they are given a full possession. It's not just 2 possessions unless the time runs out. They were given 2 possessions. That timing was really just to give them a break. If it goes up to that entire 15 minutes, then they take the amount of time that you take in between quarters, which is 5 minutes, if that. Then they switch sides, and then they keep playing from wherever on the field, just on the other side that they were. But it was slightly confusing because in the regular season, if the time runs out in the overtime period, then the game's over. Then it's a tie. It could be a tie. It could be, or now since you can score and the other team still gets it, unless it's a touchdown in the regular season. If the time runs out, then the game's over. You know, it could end in a tie. It could end without the team having a full possession in the regular season. But that's why they didn't really mention that. So a team could kick a field goal so this is regular season. Team could get the ball, march down, kick a field goal. Game's not over, because the only way to end it in the regular season immediately is to score a touchdown. So you score a field goal. You kick a field goal. Sorry, you kick a field goal. Then the other team gets the ball back, because the game only ends if it's a touchdown or a defensive score. Now this team's going down, getting their possession that they get. If the time runs out when they have the ball, it doesn't matter where they have the ball. It's second down, and it's 3rd and goal, and time runs out. They lose. They lose the game. It doesn't matter that they didn't get their entire possession. The game is over. In The postseason, I guess that's not the case. They never said that. They never said anything like that. They didn't. The broadcasters never actually said that. I mean, that must be the rule because there's no ties. So that is not the last. In the regular season, there is more than the assumption. It's the truth that 10 minutes, there is no more. It is just that 10 minutes. You have the 10 minutes of the extra period, and win, lose, or draw, it's just the 10 minutes. In this, that 15 minutes, it's kind of just, hey, you got 15 minutes until we give you a little break, maybe, you know? So it was slightly confusing, which I'm sure the players, I would hope that the coaches all knew, but the rules of it were slightly confusing. But as it turns out, the Chiefs win with 3 seconds to go in that last period, which did make it an exciting Super Bowl. It was like in that moment, I remember thinking, great game. It was a great game. But there were a few moments before that where I was thinking, this might not be that great a game. If this might be boring. Just a little bit. You know, obviously it's the Super Bowl, so you're having a good time, but it might there are times where I was thinking this might have been a little bit not a great game, but as it turned out, it was a great game. That was my true belief during the entire game, is that it was kind of teetering between being a great game and an all right game. It ended up being a great game. It was a great game, but it was, it wasn't that far away from going the other way. But yeah, the NFL season is over. The Giants are going to win the Super Bowl next year. That's pretty clear. And football is not over because we have the UFL starting this coming spring, March 30th, which I think is also just around opening day for baseball. I think there's a game in Korea that the Dodgers might be playing. But the XFL is starting this coming, or the UFL is starting. The UFL, the merger of the XFL and the USFL, has created the UFL, the United Football League. Finally, the XFL and the USFL have united, uniting the two spring football leagues, which is truly brings peace to the kingdom of spring football, which is only a positive. It's only a positive, but it's actually true. It's only a positive for spring football because competing to an entity such as spring football cannot compete with another spring football league because, holy moly, there's a few enough people who watch those games as it is. You need to have people all watching the same thing, but it seems like it might work because you had the XFL, which had the benefit of all these wrestling fans who just want to support something that has the letter X in it. And they want to be like, Extreme Football League. So there's kind of a joke aspect to supporting the XFL, and the USFL had Fox. They signed a good contract with Fox Broadcast, which means that they are able to get in front of more viewers. So the XFL had a built-in fan base, and the USFL had signed a better contract. And even the XFL signed it with ESPN. So now you have XFL, USFL merging. So now you have Fox and ESPN. And you also have that built-in fan base from the XFL of wrestling fans, which could make it viable, could make it actually a viable league. And that is the thing that I am most interested in terms of the UFL, is its viability. So it's pretty interesting, is talking about viability when it comes to sports leagues. That's usually what people what people root for is viability. But that is absolutely what I find most interesting. The XFL the UFL had some news today. AJ McCarron re-signed with the St. Louis Battlehawks of the UFL, formerly of the XFL. Of the XFL division, there are two divisions in the UFL. For those of you who don't know, there's the XFL division, and then there's the USFL division. The Battlehawks are in the XFL division, and AJ McCarron re-signs with the UFL Battlehawks in a homecoming for the ages, clearly, which it's a bittersweet story when you do hear about guys who are signing with XFL teams who have some notoriety, a guy like a players who you think, oh, I know that guy from like his college days or from some of his NFL days, because on the same day that he signed with the UFL Battlehawks, he got released by the Cincinnati Bengals of the NFL. So you see all these notifications like, oh, AJ McCarron, he's signed with the Battlehawks. It's like, oh, cool. And then you look up the story, and the reason why he was able to sign with the Battlehawks is because he got released by the fucking Bengals. So it was it was a tough day. It was a whirlwind of a day for AJ McCarron. Good for him. That's a pretty good backup plan. I think the quarterbacks in that league still make like hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even more now because of the merger. That they do have that Fox deal, so they have a pretty good TV deal. And the Battlehawks are the most popular team in spring football in terms of fan interaction and attendance at the stadium. St. Louis Battlehawks. I'm fascinated by this coming season of the UFL, the first season of the UFL, but this season of spring football, because you have the Battlehawks in St. Louis, which is obviously a viable professional football town. They just recently had the St. Louis Rams leave St. Louis and go to LA. So St. Louis is perfectly viable. They have a few other cities. They now have Birmingham, but Birmingham, Alabama has a team, the Birmingham Stallions, who are going to be playing the Renegades, I think, in the opening weekend. But again, I'm all about viability when it comes to UFL. You have Birmingham, Alabama, which is a cool place to have a professional football team. Alabama you think of more as a college football town, but Birmingham could have a legitimate pro football team, so it's fascinating to me to see which of these teams maybe get absorbed by the NFL. The St. Louis Battlehawks, could we see the St. Louis Battlehawks in the NFL come 2030, maybe? Or the Birmingham Stallions, could it be the Birmingham Stallions and the St. Louis Battlehawks as the new NFL teams when the next expansion comes? It could be. Make sure that all my production value is still happening appropriately. It is. But yeah, that's the UFL news that I'm most interested in. March 30th. And there might be a little specific UFL show coming that time. We'll see about that. If you're interested in seeing a UFL UFL specific podcast show, sound off. Make sure we know about it, or make sure we know about it here at the End Stuff Productions. But so there's going to be plenty of talk about the UFL this coming season. I might have co-hosts for that. I might not, because even if I don't, I still want to talk about it. I still want to talk about attendance numbers and what they do with ratings, because it's like, is there a chance that this friggin' thing can actually work? But so that's what interests me the most about the league is this potentially viable? Because people love football, and these cities are actually probably pretty hungry for pro football. So, like, can St. Louis and Birmingham actually make people think, oh, I guess this is a real league? And the answer is maybe. Right? The answer is possibly. But we'll talk more about that as the weeks come. Next week, I will probably have a guest again on the show. This was a solo show because I like doing the solo shows. So thanks everybody for subscribing and watching. I'm Patrick Haggerty. I'm your host. This is Sports and Stuff. Thanks everybody for everything. Good night, and we'll see you next time. Bye.